My name is Eleanor, I am 78 years old, and I have lived through more storms than I can count. But nothing prepared me for the storm that came from the very people I gave my life to. My son and his wife. It happened on a cold Sunday evening, the kind of evening where the air feels heavy with secrets. I had just finished setting the table for dinner when my daughter-in-law, Claire, stood up abruptly, her eyes blazing with contempt. "You think you can keep living here for free? You're nothing but dead weight," she hissed. Before I could utter a word, she spit directly on my face. Time stop. The warm, disgusting spit slid down my cheek like a burning reminder of how low they thought of me. I froze, trembling, not because of the spit itself, but because of what followed. My own son, my only child, Daniel, sat back in his chair and laughed. He didn't defend me. He didn't stop her. He just laughed. "See, Mom," Daniel said, smirking. "That's what happens when you overstay your welcome." My knees buckled. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I stared at the two of them, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I had spent years raising that boy alone, sacrificing everything, working double shifts to give him a good life. And here he was, laughing as his wife degraded me. You think this is funny?" My voice cracked, trembling under the weight of betrayal. Claire crossed her arms. "You should be grateful we even let you stay in the guest room. Maybe it's time you moved to a nursing home. Better yet, the streets." Daniel laughed harder, taking a sip of his wine as if her words were music to his ears. The two of them looked at me like I was nothing, like I was trash they had forgotten to throw out. My tears came hot and fast, but I wiped them quickly. I wouldn't let them see me break. Not fully. I turned away, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind screamed at me to pack my bags, to leave that house and never look back. But another part of me, stronger, quieter, whispered, "No, not yet. You'll leave when you're ready. And when you do, they will regret every single tear they made you shed." I went to my room silently, with their laughter echoing behind me like a cruel song. As I shut the door, I stared at the small box under my bed, the box they had no idea existed. Inside it were documents, keys, and something far more powerful than their money or arrogance. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought I was powerless. But they didn't laugh when they lost everything. Because everything they believed belonged to them didn't. And soon they were going to find out in the most painful way possible. When I walked back out of that room, my face was calm, but my heart was a storm ready to strike. They would never see it coming. The next morning they thought I had gone to the market. But I wasn't at the market. I was at the bank, and what I did there would be the first step to turning their laughter into tears. You think you know how this ends. You have no idea what's coming next. Stay tuned, because the moment they realized the house, the cars, and even Daniel's precious company were not theirs to keep, was the moment their world collapsed. Do you want to know how I did it? You'll find out in the next chapter. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready to hear the truth. The real storm is only beginning. I woke up early that morning, long before the sun crept through the curtains. My body ached, not from age, but from the weight of the humiliation I had endured the night before. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers grazed the small wooden box under my bed. It had been there for decades, holding secrets even Daniel didn't know. Inside were keys to properties, share certificates, and legal documents my late husband, Robert, had left me. Daniel believed his father left him everything. He was wrong. Robert had trusted me, and everything was in my name. Daniel was just a child back then, and I never saw the need to boast or flaunt what we had. But now, as I sat there with my heart pounding, I realized this was my quiet weapon. They thought I had nothing. They thought they owned me. They had no idea that the ground they walked on, the roof over their heads, the car Daniel bragged about, all of it was under my control. I dressed simply, taking only my handbag and the documents I needed. When I walked out, Claire was sipping coffee in her silk robe, her phone in hand. She didn't even greet me. Instead, she smirked and said, "Don't forget to buy more groceries. Use your money this time." Daniel was still asleep, snoring like a man without a care in the world. I gave her a small smile. "Oh, don't worry, Claire. I won't forget." But I wasn't going to the grocery store. The streets were quiet as I walked to the bus stop, holding my handbag close to my chest. I could have called for a taxi, but I didn't want anyone to suspect where I was going. My destination was the main branch of the bank where all my accounts were held. For years, I had let the accounts grow quietly, untouched, while I lived simply. Robert had been a wise man. He invested in properties and stocks that flourished over the years. And while Daniel believed he had full control of everything, he was just a guest in a world I owned. When I walked into the bank, the staff greeted me warmly. They had known me for years as Mrs. Eleanor Williams, the woman who always handled her finances quietly but firmly. I sat down with the manager, a young man named Steve, who had great respect for me. "Mrs. Williams," he said with a polite smile. "How can I help you today?" I handed him my documents. "I need to transfer certain assets to a private account under my name only. And I also want to make some adjustments to the ownership of my properties." He glanced at the papers, then back at me. "Are you sure you want to proceed with this? It's a major change." "Yes," I said firmly. "I've made up my mind." While he processed the documents, memories of Daniel as a boy flooded my mind. The way he used to hug me tightly. How he once promised to take care of me when I grew old. I had believed him. I had raised him with love, sacrificed everything for him, and this was how he repaid me, laughing as his wife spat in my face. My heart hurt, but my resolve only grew stronger. After hours at the bank, everything was set. My properties were now fully locked under my name with clauses that neither Daniel nor Claire could touch. I even added conditions that would ensure they could never benefit from anything I owned unless I chose to let them. As I left the bank, the air felt lighter. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control. That evening, I returned home with a bag of groceries just to keep up appearances. Claire barely looked at me as I walked in, scrolling through her phone like the queen she believed herself to be. Daniel sat on the couch, his legs spread wide, watching sports. "You're back," he said without glancing at me. "Did you get everything?" "Yes, Daniel," I said quietly. "I got everything." They had no idea how true those words were. Over the next few days, I watched them closely. They continued their disrespect, Claire leaving dirty dishes for me to clean, Daniel mocking me whenever he got the chance. They believed they were untouchable. But every insult, every cruel laugh, only fueled my determination. One night, I overheard them talking in their room. "We need to get rid of her," Claire said, her voice cold. "She's taking up space, and I'm tired of her pathetic face." Daniel chuckled. "Relax, babe. I'll handle it. Maybe we'll put her in some cheap nursing home and sell the house. That'll solve everything." My blood ran cold, but I stayed silent. They were plotting against me in my own house. The next day I made my second move. I contacted my lawyer, Mr. James, who had been with me for decades. He came to the house quietly, and we signed papers that would finalize the transfer of everything out of Daniel's reach. "Mrs. Williams," Mr. James said as he packed the documents, "when they find out, they'll come running. Are you ready for that?" I nodded slowly. "Let them run. They'll learn you don't bite the hand that fed you." For the next week, I acted as if nothing had changed. I cooked, cleaned, and endured their arrogance. Inside, I smiled because I knew something they didn't. Then came the day they tried to evict me. Claire stormed into my room with Daniel behind her. "Pack your things," she sneered. "You're leaving today." I looked at her calmly. "Is that so?" "Yes," Daniel said smugly. "We're selling the house. You have an hour to be out." I stood up slowly, walked to my dresser, and pulled out a small folder. I handed it to Daniel with steady hands. "You might want to read this first." He frowned, flipping through the documents. His face drained of color as his eyes scanned the pages. Claire snatched the folder from him, reading over his shoulder. What is this?" she stammered. "That," I said with a small smile, is proof that this house, along with every single property you thought belonged to you, is mine. Legally. You have no right to sell it. You have no right to stay here." Claire's face twisted with rage. Daniel's hands shook. You can't do this to us," he shouted. "Oh, I can," I said calmly. "And I already have." Their laughter turned to panic. Their arrogance melted into fear. And as I stood there, watching them squirm, I realized this was only the beginning of their downfall. What they didn't know was that I wasn't done yet. This was just step one. You think this was satisfying? You haven't seen anything yet. The real pain was still coming for them, and it would hit harder than they ever imagined. Because soon they wouldn't just lose the house. They would lose everything. And the best part, they would have no one to blame but themselves. Do you want to know how I made them lose it all? Stay tuned, because the next chapter will reveal the storm they never saw coming. If this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The revenge has only begun, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. The night after I confronted them with the documents was strangely quiet. Daniel and Claire barely spoke to me. They avoided eye contact as if I had suddenly turned into someone they couldn't understand. Someone who didn't fit the image of the weak, dependent old woman they thought they could control. I could see it in their eyes. Fear mixed with anger. They weren't used to me standing up to them. They weren't used to me having power. But they didn't know this was just the beginning. The next morning, I found Claire pacing in the living room, whispering angrily into her phone. "I don't care how you do it," she hissed. "We need that house. She's old, she'll die soon anyway. Just find a way." I stood at the doorway, watching her with calm eyes. She froze when she saw me, her face twisting into a fake smile. "Oh, good morning, Eleanor," she said sweetly, but her voice was laced with venom. "Good morning, Claire," I replied softly. "Who were you talking to so early?" "No one important," she snapped, brushing past me. She was lying, of course. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted her to dig her own grave deeper. Daniel came out moments later, looking exhausted and pale. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice shaky. "Oh, about what?" I asked innocently. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You can't just take everything away from me. I worked hard for this." I raised an eyebrow. "You worked hard. Daniel, everything you have came from me and your father. The company you call yours. It's mine. The house you brag about. The cars you drive. You've been living in comfort because I allowed it. Don't ever forget that." His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He had no words. "I suggest," I continued, my voice calm but firm, "you and your wife start showing me the respect I deserve. Otherwise, I'll make sure you learn what it means to have nothing." He stormed out without saying a word, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Claire followed him, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. For the next few days, the tension in the house was unbearable. They tiptoed around me, but I knew they were plotting something. I overheard them late at night, whispering about finding ways to get me declared mentally unstable so they could take control of my assets. They thought they were clever. But they underestimated the woman who raised Daniel. I quietly contacted my lawyer again. "James," I said when he answered, "they're planning to have me declared incompetent. I need to prepare for that." He chuckled softly. "I anticipated this, Mrs. Williams. I've already arranged for a medical and psychological evaluation to prove your mental soundness. We'll file it with the court before they even try to make a move." Smiled. "Thank you, James. They won't know what hit them." A few days later, I invited an old friend, Martha, to stay with me. Martha was sharp, witty, and had been a witness to many things in my life. Her presence was part of my plan. Someone reliable who could testify to my stability if things escalated. Claire didn't like Martha. She made it obvious with her forced smiles and snide comments. "Oh, so now we have another mouth to feed," she muttered under her breath. Martha, never one to be intimidated, shot back. "Don't worry, dear. I'm not here to eat your scraps." I almost laughed. The next week, Daniel and Claire made their move. They called a doctor to the house without my consent, claiming I was forgetting things, acting erratically, and putting myself in danger. The doctor, a young man with kind eyes, asked to speak to me privately. "Mrs. Williams," he said, "they're saying you've been showing signs of dementia. Is that true?" Smiled. "Does it seem like I have dementia, doctor?" He laughed softly. "Not at all. You seem very clear-headed." I handed him a copy of the evaluation James had arranged earlier. "Here's proof of my mental stability. I suggest you take a good look at it before you write anything down." When he left, Daniel and Claire were furious. "You tricked us!" Claire screamed. "No," I said calmly. "I just outsmarted you." Their faces were priceless. But they didn't stop there. That night, I caught Claire trying to sneak into my room. She was going through my drawers, searching for something. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Looking for these?" I asked, holding up the keys to my safe. She froze, her face pale. I was just..." "Save it," I interrupted. "If you ever set foot in my room again without permission, you'll be out on the street before sunrise. Do you understand me?" She swallowed hard and nodded, scurrying out like a rat caught in the light. The following morning, I decided it was time for step 2 of my plan. I contacted a real estate agent and instructed them to start the process of selling the house. Yes, the house Daniel thought was his sanctuary. I also arranged for the company's shares to be transferred to a new trust that neither Daniel nor Claire could touch. By the end of the week, the house was sold to a wealthy couple who planned to move in within a month. Daniel and Claire had no idea. I watched them laughing in the living room, mocking me behind my back, completely oblivious that their days in that house were numbered. When the papers were finalized, I called for a family meeting. Daniel and Claire sat across from me, arms crossed, ready to fight. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice steady. "The house has been sold. You have 2 weeks to move out." Their jaws dropped. Claire screeched, "You can't do that. Where will we go?" Daniel's face turned red. "Mom, this is insane. You're destroying us." I leaned back in my chair, a calm smile on my face. "No, Daniel. You destroyed yourself the moment you allowed your wife to spit on me and laughed about it." For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. Real fear. But this was only the beginning. They still had no idea about the company, the cars, and everything else they were about to lose. And when they found out, their world would crumble completely. What happened next left them broken, desperate, and on their knees. Do you want to see how I brought them to that point? Wait for the next chapter. If this story has kept you hooked, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The revenge is far from over. The real storm is yet to hit. The 2 weeks I gave Daniel and Claire to vacate the house ticked by like a countdown to their destruction. Each day they grew more desperate. They tried everything to make me change my mind. Daniel begged, Claire screamed, they even tried to guilt-trip me. But I remained calm, polite even, because nothing they said could erase the humiliation they had caused me. Late one evening, I was sitting on the porch when Daniel came out. For the first time in years, he looked like the little boy I once knew. Eyes filled with fear and helplessness. "Mom," he said softly, "where will we go? Claire's parents won't take us in, and we can't afford a new house right now." I looked at him, my heart aching even as I spoke. "Daniel, I gave you everything. I sacrificed my life for you. And what did you do? You spat on me through her, and you laughed while she did it. You allowed her to treat me like dirt. So why should I care where you go now?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Tears welled up in his eyes, and for a moment I almost softened. Almost. Inside, Claire was on the phone yelling at someone. "We need that money. She's selling the house, and we'll have nothing." She slammed the phone down when she saw me watching. "What are you looking at, old woman?" she spat. I smiled faintly. The face of someone who's about to learn a very hard lesson. The next day, movers arrived. Daniel and Claire thought they were there to take my things. They were wrong. The movers packed up their belongings and set them outside. Claire screamed at them, calling them thieves, while Daniel stood frozen, clutching his head in disbelief. "You can't do this," Claire shrieked. "I already have," I said simply, handing them the final notice. "You're trespassing now." The wealthy couple who bought the house arrived to inspect the property. They looked at Daniel and Claire with disgust as they stood in the driveway with their suitcases. Claire begged them to delay the move, but they refused. That night Daniel and Claire stayed in a cheap motel. They didn't know where to go next. They had no savings, no backup plan, because they had spent years living off what I provided. But their nightmare was just beginning. The following week, I arranged to take full control of the company Daniel had been running. He thought it was his. He thought he was the CEO. But the truth was, he was only a figurehead. Every legal document placed me as the majority shareholder, and without my approval, he had no authority. I called a board meeting and walked into the office like a queen reclaiming her throne. Daniel was already there, sweating bullets. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I'm here," I said, "to take back what's mine." The board members, who had always respected me, voted unanimously to remove Daniel as CEO. He sat there in shock as the reality hit him. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. "Oh, Daniel," I said with a sad smile, "I can. And I have." Claire stormed into the office moments later, screaming like a madwoman. "You witch! You ruined our lives." "No," I said firmly. "You ruined your own life when you chose cruelty over kindness." Security escorted them out, and as they walked away, I felt the weight of years of pain lifting off my shoulders. But my plan didn't end there. I made sure to freeze their access to every bank account they had that was linked to me. Within days, they were completely broke. Word spread quickly in town about what happened. Friends stopped answering their calls. People who once admired Daniel for his success now looked at him with pity or disdain. One rainy evening they came to my door. Daniel's face was hollow, Claire's makeup streaked from crying. "Mom, please," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "We have nowhere to go. We're sorry." Claire stayed silent, her pride shattered. I looked at them for a long moment. Part of me wanted to let them in, to comfort them. But another part of me, the part they had trampled on, knew they needed to learn. "You'll survive," I said softly. "Just like I did when I raised you with nothing. Now leave." Daniel fell to his knees, sobbing, but Claire dragged him away. As I closed the door, my heart broke, but I knew this was the only way for them to truly understand the pain they had caused. They thought they had lost everything. They were wrong. The real blow was still to come, and it would leave them with nothing. No home, no money, no reputation. And when that day came, they would finally understand who they had been laughing at all along. Because the final stage of my plan was already in motion, and it would destroy them completely. What I did next was something no one saw coming. Not even me. Do you want to know what it was? Don't miss the next chapter, because the storm is about to hit its peak. If this story has kept you glued to the screen, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The worst for them, and the best for me, is yet to come. The rain poured relentlessly the following morning, as if the sky itself was washing away the remnants of who I once was, the fragile woman they mocked. I stood by the window, sipping my tea, watching droplets race down the glass while thinking about my next move. The eviction and removal from the company had shaken Daniel and Claire to their core, but it wasn't enough. They still needed to understand that when you choose to betray someone who gave you everything, the consequences go far deeper than losing material things. Later that day, I received a call from my lawyer James. His tone was steady, almost excited. "Mrs. Williams, the audits you ordered on Daniel's company dealings have revealed something interesting." My eyebrows rose. "Go on." "It appears Daniel has been misusing company funds for personal luxuries, trips, expensive dinners, and some suspicious transfers to Claire's relatives. These irregularities could lead to serious legal repercussions. Should I proceed with filing the report?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding but my voice calm. "Yes, James. Proceed. Let the truth be exposed." By the end of the week, Daniel received notice of an investigation. The board froze his remaining personal accounts and barred him from entering any company premises. When the news broke publicly, it wasn't just a scandal. It was a humiliation. Headlines screamed of the fraud investigation, and former friends distanced themselves immediately. I sat quietly in my new home, a beautiful cottage I purchased long ago but never revealed to anyone. Martha, who had been staying with me, looked over at me with admiration. "Eleanor, they're falling apart. Are you sure you can watch this happen without giving in to pity?" I looked down at my hands, remembering the night Claire spat on my face, and how Daniel laughed. Pity is something they showed me none of. I will not break for them now. That evening, I decided to drive past the cheap motel where they had been staying. I didn't stop, but through the rain-streaked car window, I saw them arguing outside under the flickering light of the sign. Claire was screaming, waving her hands in Daniel's face, while he stood hunched, defeated. They looked nothing like the arrogant pair who once laughed at my pain. They were shadows of themselves. The next day, Claire showed up at my door. Her makeup was smeared, her clothes wrinkled, and her voice cracked when she spoke. "Eleanor, please. I'm sorry." I stood still, letting her words hang in the air. "Sorry for what, Claire?" For everything. I was wrong. I was cruel. Please help us." Her voice trembled, but I didn't budge. "Do you think an apology can undo the way you spat in my face? The way you treated me like I was nothing? No, Claire. You have to live with the choices you made." She fell to her knees, sobbing, but I closed the door gently. I wasn't heartless. I was teaching her the lesson life had failed to teach her. Days passed, and things grew worse for them. The company's lawyers pressed charges for embezzlement, and they faced a lawsuit that would strip them of anything they had left. They couldn't pay their legal fees, and soon the bank repossessed the car Daniel loved so much. Then came the final blow. I attended a court hearing where Daniel and Claire faced the board's legal team. I sat in the back quietly, watching as the judge declared them liable for the missing funds. Their faces were pale, their eyes empty. They looked broken beyond repair. After the hearing, Daniel turned and saw me. He walked over slowly, his hands shaking. "Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I've lost everything. You've won. Are you happy now?" I met his gaze, my own eyes misty but my voice strong. "No, Daniel. I'm not happy. This was never about winning. This was about you learning what happens when you bite the hand that fed you." For a long moment we just stood there, the silence heavy between us. Then he lowered his head and walked away with Claire, who was too ashamed to look at me. I should have felt satisfaction, but all I felt was a strange emptiness. Revenge had been necessary, but it came with a bitter taste. Still, I wasn't finished. I had one last move to make, one that would secure my peace and close this chapter of my life forever. Because while they were losing everything, I was preparing to rebuild my life in a way they could never touch again. And when I revealed my final decision, it would leave everyone, including Daniel, speechless. What did I do? You'll find out in the next chapter, where the final pieces of my plan fall into place. Don't miss the next chapter because the endgame is coming closer, and it's more shocking than anything you've heard so far. If this story has kept you hooked, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The truth is about to explode wide open. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. I stood on the balcony of my cottage, feeling the warmth on my face. It was a new day, but for Daniel and Claire, the darkness was only deepening. My final move was approaching, and it would make everything they had done to me echo back louder than they could ever imagine. That morning, I went through the remaining documents my lawyer James had prepared. They were deeds, transfer agreements, and a carefully crafted legal will that would ensure Daniel and Claire were completely cut off from any future benefit from my estate. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. I was protecting myself and the legacy I worked for from the people who had proven they didn't deserve it. Later that afternoon, James came by to review everything. He looked at me with respect in his eyes. "Mrs. Williams," he said, With these signatures, you're not only securing your future but also sending a clear message. Are you certain you want to proceed with the disinheritance clause? I didn't hesitate. Yes, James. I'm very certain. They need to know there are consequences for cruelty. He nodded, and with a stroke of the pen, I sealed the fate of my only son and his wife. It was a heavy decision, but it was the right one. Meanwhile, Daniel and Claire had been evicted from the motel for failing to pay their bill. Word around town was they were living out of their car, the same car that was soon repossessed by the bank. When they had nothing left, Claire left Daniel. I heard from Martha that she took off to another state, leaving him alone with his misery. The night after Claire left, Daniel came to my cottage. It was raining again. How poetic. He stood at my gate, drenched, shivering and broken. I stepped outside, holding an umbrella, but I didn't invite him in. "Mom!" he cried, his voice hoarse. "She's gone. Everyone's gone. Have nothing. Please forgive me." My heart ached at the sight of my son, the boy I raised with love, now reduced to a shell of himself. But I stayed firm. "Daniel, forgiveness is not something I can give easily after what you allowed to happen. You didn't just let her hurt me, you joined her." A sob. "I was wrong. I see that now. Please. Just give me a chance to make things right." I took a deep breath. "You need to make things right with yourself first. Go and rebuild your life without leaning on me. That's the only way you'll truly understand." He nodded slowly, knowing he had no other choice. As he walked away, I felt both pain and relief. Pain because he was my son, relief because I had finally taken back control of my life. Days turned into weeks. Daniel disappeared from my world completely. I heard he was working odd jobs, struggling to get back on his feet. And as for Claire, she never returned. With peace finally settling in my life, I decided to do something unexpected. I donated a portion of my wealth to charities supporting elderly people who had been abandoned by their families. I set up a foundation in my name to help women like me, women who had been disrespected, humiliated, and left to suffer in silence. The foundation quickly gained attention, and people admired the strength it took for me to turn my pain into something powerful. I became a symbol of resilience in the community, and that gave me more joy than any form of revenge ever could. But just when I thought everything was over, something happened that stirred everything back up. One night, as I was locking my front door, I saw headlights approaching. Car stopped in front of my gate, and out stepped Daniel. He looked different, cleaner, stronger, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill through me. "Mom," he said, his voice steady, "I need to talk to you. It's about something you don't know. Something Claire planned before she left." I froze, my hand still on the door. "What are you talking about, Daniel?" "She didn't just want to take your house," he said, his voice trembling. "She wanted to destroy you completely. And I think she's coming back to finish what she started." My heart skipped a beat. Claire wasn't gone. She was plotting something even worse. Before I could respond, Daniel handed me a sealed envelope. "You need to read this. It's proof." With shaking hands I opened it, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. Claire hadn't just been after the house. She had forged documents, hired someone dangerous, and left a trail that could put me in serious danger. The storm I thought was over was only beginning. Do you want to know what was in that envelope and how it changed everything? You won't believe what happens next in the next chapter. If this story has captured your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The darkest twist is yet to come. My hands trembled as I unfolded the papers inside the envelope Daniel had given me. They were photocopies of contracts, receipts, and even emails, all pointing to something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. Claire had been planning to frame me for financial crimes using forged documents. She had hired a man to manipulate bank records to make it appear as though I had been laundering money through the company's accounts. The trail she left behind was meticulous, designed to send me to prison while she and Daniel, at least in her original plan, took everything. But now, with Daniel out of her picture, she was acting alone. And according to the last email he had found, she wasn't done yet. She had connected with dangerous people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. I looked at Daniel, my heart pounding. How long have you known about this? I found the documents hidden in one of her suitcases before she left me, he admitted, shame in his eyes. At first, I thought it was just old evidence from when she was scheming against you. But then, she called me last week. She said she wasn't finished. She said you'd pay in ways you couldn't imagine. Mom, she's coming back. Cold chill ran down my spine. And you waited this long to tell me. I didn't know what to do. Daniel cried. I was scared. But I couldn't let her hurt you again. Not after everything. Despite everything he had done, I could see sincerity in his eyes. He was terrified, but for the first time in years he was standing up for me. I called James immediately and explained everything. He listened carefully, then said, Mrs. Williams, we need to act fast. We'll strengthen your legal protections, alert the authorities, and make sure that if she tries anything, she's the one who goes to prison. Within hours, James arranged for security to patrol around my property. The police were notified, and an investigator began tracing Claire's movements. They discovered she had recently returned to town under a different name, staying in a rundown apartment under an alias. As I sat in my living room that night, the weight of it all pressed down on me. Claire wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. But I refused to let fear control me. I had survived worse storms, and I wasn't going to break now. Daniel stayed with me that night. He slept on the couch, restless, while I sat awake, staring at the envelope, going through every detail again and again. The next morning, the investigator came back with shocking news. Claire had emptied the last of her hidden accounts and was in contact with someone known for blackmail and extortion. Their plan was to break into my house, steal the original property documents, and use them to create new forgeries. We couldn't wait. I moved all original documents to a secure safety deposit box at the bank and kept only copies at home. James also filed an emergency motion to put my assets under legal protection, making it impossible for any unauthorized changes to be made. That evening, Daniel and I sat in the living room, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Suddenly, the lights flickered. I looked at him, alarmed. It's just the storm, he said, though his voice trembled. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't just the storm. A loud crash came from the back of the house. My heart leapt to my throat. Daniel jumped up, grabbing a baseball bat from the corner. We moved cautiously toward the sound, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. There, in the shadows of the kitchen, stood Claire. Her hair was wild, her eyes burning with rage, and in her hand she clutched a crowbar. You ruined my life, old woman, she spat, her voice trembling with fury. You think you can take everything from me? I'll make sure you suffer. Daniel stepped in front of me. Claire, stop this. You've already lost. Shut up, she screamed. You're nothing without me. And you, she snarled at me, are going to regret ever crossing me. Before she could move, the security team burst through the front door, guns drawn. Drop the weapon, they shouted. Claire froze, her face twisted in shock as they surrounded her. She tried to run, but they tackled her to the ground, handcuffing her as she screamed and thrashed. I stood there, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Daniel held me, whispering, It's over, Mom. It's finally over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't truly over yet. Claire was arrested, yes, but people like her didn't give up easily. She would try to fight this in court, twist the truth, and maybe even drag Daniel down with her if she could. As they dragged her away, she glared at me, her eyes full of venom. This isn't the end, Eleanor. You'll see. Her words echoed in my ears long after she was gone. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what more she could do from behind bars. But as the clock ticked past midnight, I realized something. Claire was powerless now, but the scars she left on my life were permanent. And yet, I also knew something else. I wasn't powerless anymore. The trial was coming, and with it, the final showdown. What happened at that trial shocked everyone and turned the entire town upside down. You won't believe the twist that happens next in the next chapter. If this story has kept you gripping your seat, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The climax is approaching, and you do not want to miss it. The trial began 2 weeks later, and the courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps outside, cameras flashing as Claire was escorted in handcuffs. She wore a smug smile despite her circumstances, as if she still believed she could outsmart the system. I arrived with Daniel and James by my side, my heart pounding but my head held high. As I walked past Claire, she leaned close and whispered, "Enjoy this while it lasts, Eleanor. I always win." I didn't respond. Instead, I looked her straight in the eye, letting her see that I was no longer the woman she spat on. I was stronger now. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The forged documents, the blackmail attempts, the testimony of the investigator who tracked her movements, and the security footage of her breaking into my house with a weapon. Claire's defense tried to claim she was emotionally unstable, blaming me for ruining her life. But the judge wasn't buying it. When it was my turn to testify, I stood before the court and spoke with a steady voice. Claire tried to destroy me, not just by taking what was mine, but by stripping away my dignity. She spat on me, humiliated me, and plotted to send me to prison for crimes I didn't commit. But I'm here today because I refuse to be broken by people like her. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. The courtroom was silent. Even Daniel couldn't hold back his tears as he listened. Then Claire took the stand and her mask slipped. She ranted, screamed, and blamed everyone but herself. She claimed Daniel had conspired with her, that he knew everything and encouraged her plans. My heart clenched, but James was ready. He produced evidence proving Daniel had no involvement in her later schemes, including the envelope of documents he had risked himself to retrieve. The judge dismissed her accusations as baseless. By the final day, it was clear she had no way out. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison for fraud, attempted theft, and breaking and entering with intent to harm. Her screams filled the courtroom as she was dragged away. "You'll regret this, Eleanor. You'll all regret this." But her threats fell on deaf ears. She was gone, and her power over me was gone with her. After the trial, Daniel approached me outside. His eyes were red, his voice shaking. "Mom, I know I failed you. I know I laughed when she humiliated you. But I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Please give me a chance." For a long moment I just looked at him. My heart was torn. He was my son, but he had been part of my pain. Still, I saw something in his eyes. True remorse. "Daniel," I said softly, "you have a long road ahead. Redemption isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. Prove to me you've changed, and maybe one day, I'll believe you." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as Daniel worked tirelessly to rebuild his life. He got a modest job, rented a small apartment, and stayed out of trouble. Slowly, he began to understand what it meant to stand on his own. As for me, my foundation grew rapidly, helping hundreds of abandoned and mistreated elderly people across the state. Letters poured in from strangers thanking me for inspiring them to take control of their lives. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. But just when I thought everything had finally settled, a letter arrived in the mail. There was no return address, but when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was from Claire. Written in messy handwriting, it said, "You may think you've won, but prison is just another place to plan. Have friends, Eleanor. When I get out, you'll wish you had finished me off." My hands shook as I crumpled the paper. Fear crept back into my chest, but this time I pushed it away. I wasn't the same woman she had once terrorized. I handed the letter to James, who immediately notified the prison authorities. They assured me Claire would be placed under strict watch. Still, her words haunted me at night. Weeks passed, and one evening, while closing my foundation office, I saw a shadow across the street. My heart raced. Was it my imagination, or was someone watching me? Daniel insisted on staying close after hearing about the letter. "She's not getting to you again, Mom," he said. "Not while I'm here." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire's influence reached further than the prison walls. One rainy night I received a phone call. A man's voice, cold and unfamiliar, whispered, "She sends her regards." Then the line went dead. My blood ran cold. Was Claire orchestrating something from behind bars? Was this threat real or just a scare tactic? I didn't know then, but what happened next would push me to my limits, and force Daniel to prove just how far he was willing to go to protect me. Because the final storm was brewing, and when it hit, it would change everything forever. Do you want to know how Daniel faced that storm and whether Claire's final threat became reality? The shocking truth will unfold in the next chapter. If this story has kept you holding your breath, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The most intense twist is coming, and you will not want to miss it. The phone call replayed in my mind over and over like a broken record. "She sends her regards." Those 3 words had power, dripping with menace, echoing late into the night as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside the window made me jump. I tried to stay strong, but fear was creeping in again, slowly. Daniel noticed. "Mom, you're not sleeping," he said one morning, his eyes full of concern. "We should go to the police." "I already gave them the letter and reported the call," I replied. "They said they'd increase patrols near my house." "But Daniel, what if Claire really has someone out there?" His jaw tightened. "Then they'll have to go through me first." For the first time in years, Daniel was stepping up, not as a spoiled man who leaned on me, but as a son who wanted to protect his mother. He moved into my cottage temporarily, claiming he wouldn't leave my side until he was sure I was safe. I didn't object. Days passed without incident, but the tension never left. Then one night, as a storm raged outside, there was a knock on the door. Daniel grabbed the baseball bat, signaling me to stay back. He opened the door cautiously, but no one was there. Only a small package sat on the doorstep, soaked by rain. He brought it inside carefully. "Mom, don't touch it." We called the police, and when they arrived, they opened it with gloves. Inside was a small teddy bear with a slit in its belly. Stuffed inside was a note written in the same messy handwriting as before. "You're living on borrowed time." My heart pounded as the officer looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Williams, this is no idle threat. We'll assign a watch team to stay nearby 24/7 until we're certain the danger has passed." The threats didn't stop there. Mysterious cars began parking near the cottage at odd hours, driving off when Daniel approached. Strange phone calls came at night, with heavy breathing on the other end. Claire might have been in prison, but her reach was long. One evening, Daniel returned home later than usual. His clothes were damp and his face pale. "Mom, I followed one of those cars tonight," he said, his voice tense. "It led me to an old warehouse on the edge of town. There were 2 men waiting inside. I didn't go in, but I heard them talking about a job they were supposed to finish soon." Fear gripped my chest. "What job, Daniel? What did they mean?" He swallowed hard. "Mom, I think they're planning to hurt you. Claire must have hired them to finish what she started." I called James immediately, and he wasted no time contacting the authorities. That night, undercover officers staked out the warehouse. Hours later, they called with news. They had arrested the 2 men after catching them with weapons and detailed plans of my house. They confessed Claire had arranged everything through a contact on the outside, promising them a large payout once I was out of the way. The following day, prison officials placed Claire in solitary confinement, cutting her off from any contact with the outside world. Her last words as they led her away, according to the guard, were chilling. "This isn't over. She'll never be safe." Despite the arrests, I couldn't shake the unease. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, constantly looking over my shoulder. But through it all, Daniel never left me. He cooked, cleaned, and stayed close, always alert. Each night, he would sit by the window, watching for anything suspicious. One night, as the wind howled outside, Daniel turned to me. Mom, I know I can never erase what I did. But I'm here now, and I'm not leaving until I make sure you're safe. I promise you that. Tears welled up in my eyes. For the first time I believed him. The boy I raised was finally returning. As the weeks passed, the danger seemed to fade. The police confirmed there were no more threats. The men were behind bars, and Claire had lost her ability to reach anyone. Life slowly began to feel normal again. But then, on the day I least expected it, I received a letter. Not from Claire this time, but from a lawyer representing her. The letter stated she was appealing her sentence, claiming the evidence was planted and that I had orchestrated everything to destroy her. The audacity of her lies made my blood boil. James reassured me. She won't win this appeal. The evidence is airtight. She's grasping at straws. Still, the thought of seeing her in court again sent shivers down my spine. The day of the appeal hearing came, and I walked into the courtroom with Daniel by my side. Claire was brought in, thinner, more worn, but her eyes still burned with hate. When she saw me, she smirked as if she knew something I didn't. The hearing began, and her lawyer threw every accusation at me, claiming I manipulated evidence and used my wealth to frame her. But one by one, James dismantled their arguments, presenting undeniable proof of her guilt. Then Daniel took the stand. For the first time, he spoke openly about everything. How he allowed Claire to humiliate me, how he failed me, and how he discovered her schemes. His voice cracked, but his words were strong. My mother is the victim here. Claire destroyed our lives, not the other way around. She deserves every day of her sentence. When the judge ruled to uphold her conviction, the courtroom erupted. Claire screamed, lunging toward me before guards restrained her. Her final words as they dragged her away still haunt me. You may have won this time, Eleanor. But someday, someone will finish what I started. Her threats no longer terrified me. They empowered me. Because I knew I had survived her worst. And I would survive anything else that came my way. As we left the courthouse, Daniel took my hand. Mom, I'm never leaving you again. I've lost too much already. For the first time in a long time I smiled. Maybe, just maybe, healing was possible. But there was still one final chapter to this story. One last decision I had to make that would change both our lives forever. Because forgiveness is complicated. And redemption is never free. What did I do in the end? And how did this story truly close? The final truth will be revealed in the next chapter. If this journey has kept you on edge, like, comment and subscribe. The ending is coming, and it's one you will never forget. The sun shone brightly on the morning that marked exactly 1 year since Claire was sentenced. I sat on my porch, the crisp air filling my lungs as I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the threats, and finally, the justice. Life had begun to feel peaceful again, but the scars remained. Daniel emerged from the house carrying 2 cups of tea. Here, Mom, he said softly, handing one to me. His voice was gentle, different from the arrogance he once carried. He had changed, truly changed, and I could see it in the way he looked at me, with respect, not pity or contempt. Thank you, Daniel, I said, taking the cup. You've been good to me these past months. You've proven something to yourself more than to me. He sat down beside me, his hands trembling slightly. Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need to ask you for it anyway. Not because I want something from you, but because I can't live with the man I was. I turned to face him, my eyes moist. Daniel, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. What you did broke my heart. But you've worked hard to make things right. I can forgive you. But you must never forget the pain you caused, so you never repeat it. Tears streamed down his face, and he hugged me tightly. For the first time in years, I hugged him back without hesitation. Life moved forward in the months that followed. My foundation expanded to multiple cities, helping countless elderly women regain their dignity. Daniel began volunteering there, working hard to rebuild his character. Slowly we became a family again, different but stronger. Then one day, I received news that shook me to the core. Claire had died in prison during an altercation with another inmate. The prison called to inform me, and though I expected to feel relief, I felt something else, sadness. Not for her, but for the life she had wasted on hate and greed. I sat in silence for hours that day. When Daniel came home, he asked, "Are you okay, Mom?" "She's gone," I said simply. He froze. "Claire?" He nodded. "Yes, she's gone." We didn't speak much after that. There was nothing left to say. Days later, I received a final envelope from the prison. Inside was a letter Claire had written to me but never sent. The words were messy and filled with anger, but at the very end one sentence stood out. "You may have won, Eleanor, but you taught me what power really is. And I hate you for it." I burned the letter that night, letting the ashes float away in the wind. It was over. Months passed, and with each passing day, the weight lifted a little more. Daniel continued to work with the foundation and eventually became its director, dedicating his life to helping those who had been abandoned like I once was. Watching him grow into the man I always hoped he would be became my greatest joy. On my 79th birthday, the foundation held a celebration in my honor. Hundreds of people came, beneficiaries, volunteers, and supporters. As I stood on the stage giving my speech, I looked out at the crowd and saw Daniel smiling proudly. "Life has taught me many things," I said, my voice strong. "It taught me that love can be betrayed, but it can also be rebuilt. Taught me that cruelty can break you, but it can also make you stronger. And most importantly, it taught me that no matter how dark the storm, there is always a dawn waiting to rise." The crowd applauded, some with tears in their eyes. That night, as I sat under the stars, Daniel joined me, placing a blanket over my shoulders. "Mom," he said softly, "you've given so much to the world. You deserve peace now." I smiled, my heart full. "I have peace, Daniel. I really do." And for the first time in a long, long time I truly believed it. My story began with betrayal and pain, but it ended with strength, forgiveness, and hope. Claire's laughter turned to tears, and my tears turned to power. To anyone listening to my story, remember this. Never let anyone make you feel powerless. Stand tall, even when you're broken, because the quiet strength inside you can rebuild worlds. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the strength within, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means everything, and your story matters too.